Hi there, everyone. Today I wanted to share some of my thoughts with you regarding the visual novel project that I'm currently working on. So, in my last video, I said something along the lines of, well, I feel comfortable sharing my progress with you guys because it's like 99% written already. And that's what I said. Well, I'm gonna talk with you guys about what's been on my mind. So, um, how should I put this? Well, I was looking at the text and I basically thought something along the lines of I just want it to be different. I want all the text to be different. Like, now that I know better what I'm doing, I would like to take things in a different direction and so on. And then I was like, well, do I just delete all of the writing that I already did? That doesn't seem like I was like, maybe not. And then I was like, well, there's nothing actually wrong with the writing that I already have. So that would seem like it's a perfectly valid option. And then it hit me that it's like, wait a second, I'm making a visual novel. I could just have the text that I have already written be one of the roots, because this is not strictly speaking supposed to be a linear piece of media. You can make choices that influence which route you go down. So now I'm thinking that I will do something like this. And another reason why I am wanting to, like, as you can see here, probably, there's a lot of sections that are around 40,000 words, which was right around the length of the initial section that I had written already, have written already. And it's like, well, that seems like a lot of work, but like, hear me out here, right? So I just thought I would share my thoughts with you guys. So if I'm already going to be making a multi route visual novel, then it's like, okay, well, clearly it seems like I could introduce Nola as a love interest. As I said in a previous video, I was already wanting her as a love interest anyway. Her and Alia are friends, uh, and they're in the same uh, small town, they're in the same setting, and it's like, okay, so obviously if I'm wanting. Yeah, but to be honest with you guys, part of this is also just that, like, I want to really be able to sink my teeth into something. And I like visual novels where you really just get to sink your teeth into something. Because, like, 40,000 words is fine, 50,000 words is fine, something like that is fine. But I feel like it's sort of just a one and done. It doesn't take that long. You finish it, there's nothing else to it, you move on. Whoop de doo, right? And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't mean to be like insulting that sort of thing. But for me, I like when I feel like I'm actually like living in these places with these people and spending time with them, and things can go in a bunch of different directions and stuff. And yet I don't think that this would be too outlandish. So let me break this down here, right? So we start with the intro. So I have the uh bottom three things all done. I have the intro, continue with Elm's perspective, and Alia is less mature and doesn't know, all written already, more or less. So that's all done already. But basically, it's like before the flashback section, you hear Alia talking with her friend Emari on the phone, and then there's the flashback section where Elm is getting introduced to Nola when Elm is around 9 or 10 years old. And you might be thinking, well, she's a little bit old for a love interest in that at that point, because like Elm is going to grow up and then she'd be older than him, but like there are circumstances that make them more or less the same age. Um, so I don't know. I just figure. Sorry, I'm very excited, so it's hard for me to like organize my thoughts here. But it makes sense that things would be able to go in a bunch of different directions here. And specifically, the Alia is more mature and knows, and is less mature and doesn't know sections. Uh, I think that's sort of interesting because there is a the general way of doing things when it comes to making visual novels is making it all based off of the protagonist's choices. But I figured, hey, wait a second. I could literally just have a choice that occurs which isn't even the protagonist's choice, but they influence the past. Like, Alia is less mature and doesn't know, or is more mature and does know. That isn't actually related to Elm, the protagonist's choices. That's just depending on, like, they haven't seen each other in a long time, many, many years. And depending on what happened in that time period, Alia would either know this thing, which I'm not telling you guys because it's a spoiler, or she would, right? And it's like, oh, that would lead the story in interesting different directions because if she doesn't know, then obviously she's less mature and like a little bit more sensitive and emotionally vulnerable. And then she is in a relationship with Elm, and then she discovers this thing with Elm, and that's a way that they can grow closer together. Or she already knows because of circumstances that happened in her past, and then when she meets Elm, all that stuff might be new to Elm, but she's gone through it and is more of a mature person, and they can talk about it, and they can also talk about other things and so on. And I think that's an interesting idea. So as we can see here, I guess I should break this down very simply. So just to let you know, so these arrows are like transitional uh, spaces between the roots, as you can see. So the roots are square. So uh, so it's like, okay, we can have it so that we are, after the intro, we can have it so that instead of continuing from Elm's perspective, we see from Nola's perspective for a little while. And then it's like, okay, when Elm comes back to the village, there's like a period of time where that can be interesting and different in its own right from compared to the other continuing from Elm's perspective. Uh, I don't know. I just like that it's like I can just do it different, and yet it still feels similar enough that it feels like you're in this world with these people, right? And then from Nola's perspective for a short time, we can have either Elm loves Nola or Elm loves Alia. And I think this is interesting. So the Elm loves Alia section here, in the Alia is less mature and doesn't know part of the story, which I have already written, I talked about Nola getting together with someone called Fredrickson. And Fredrickson is a young man around her age who works at a used bookstore, and he was going to help her do research on various curses because, spoiler alert, there's a curse involved with Nola. So I think it would be cool to have Nola have a love interest. And also, when I was writing the Alia's less mature and doesn't know section, I was like, okay, well, I didn't want Nola to be unhappy. I wanted her to also have a love interest. And I was also thinking, well, if I release a second game after this one, then it can be from the perspective of Nola and or Fredrickson, and we can sort of leave Elm out of it as the protagonist. He wouldn't be the protagonist. But it's like, hey, you know what? I might as well still have like another love interest for Nola. I think that's interesting. So if Elm loves Alia in this section right after Nola's perspective for a short time, we can either follow Elm, who is falling in love with Alia, who knows in this situation, and yet this situation would be significantly different from the other Alia is more mature and knows section, because it would have different lead up and they would be able to do different things together and stuff like that. Or we could just explore Nola and Fredrickson's relationship and actually just get to see that instead of just sort of glossing over it. And I think that's sort of interesting. But going back to Nola's perspective for a short time, you could also go down Elm loves Nola, and then there could be an A and B variant where there are slightly different circumstances and different things are explored there as well. And I think that's really interesting. And as you can see over here on the right, I thought it would be cool to have some side content. So basically, if you've gone through all of Nola's routes previously, like all of the ones that occur previously, then you'd be able to unlock like an extra little story that's like half the length, and you just get to spend some more time with Nola as Elm, because Elm is the one who spends the most time with her in the brutes, right? And and also same thing with Alia. Alia could have like a, oh, you've spent a lot of time with her. Here's like an extra thing that you guys can do together. And also, so Mystery Man with Emari, as you see here at the bottom right. So I don't have this guy's name figured out yet, but I know who Mystery Man is. And basically, for the entire game, at least all the parts that I have written, Alia will, sorry, Emari will occasionally talk about how it sucks being single, and she is like, oh man, like Emari runs a shop in the town, but it's a small town, and there isn't usually many new people that she meets, and she's like, oh man, there was a mystery man that showed up before, or a mystery boy that showed up before, but they were with someone already, and then Elm showed up, but he is probably liking Alia or is liking Nola, and she has a type anyway, and Elm's not really her type and everything. And it's like, wouldn't it be cool if she had a root, right? And it would be from Emari's perspective. So it would, like, instead of being a boy pursues girl, it would be a girl pursues boy. Uh, and this is perfect because the mystery guy, like, there's a reason that he's called the mystery guy. It's because his situation is actually very interesting, whatever it happens to be. And I know what it happens to be, and it is interesting. And it would be like, oh, there could be something there. I know it's sort of silly because basically all of this is boy pursues girl, and then there'd be a girl pursues boy thing. But I still think it would be interesting to. And what I mean by that seems silly is because, if you are. The reason that I think that that's a little bit silly is because if you have already made it that far, as you can see, this is after all previous routes. So this is literally like you've done everything to do with Elm, and you've done everything to do with Nola, and everything to do with Alia. Uh, and then this could be unlocked. Maybe I could have it unlocked earlier in some other way. But I think it makes sense because when you're exploring who the mystery guy is, you need to already know all this stuff. So, uh, but in a way, I feel like that's a little bit silly because if you've already done all of this boy pursues girl content, you might not really be a fan of a girl pursues boy chapter. And at the same time, if you do want a girl pursues boy chapter, you probably don't want to wade through all this boy pursues girl stuff just to get this small section, right? But at the same time, I still think, nonetheless, it would be interesting and would like help around the story off to explore like this guy's character. Um, so yeah, that's basically all I have on my mind at the moment. I'm also working on sprite work, but to be honest with you, it's while it is coming along, it's not polished to the point where I think that I should share it yet. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I just think that this is interesting, so I felt like sharing it with you guys. The scope may well shrink, but I just realized that I could. Well, I'll be honest. I realized recently that as long as I do a good quality job, I could like charge a little bit more money. Because before I was like, well, I don't know how much money could I realistically charge. Even if I do a good job, I don't have voice actors or actresses. But I think uh, there are visual novels that are really well done in like the other departments and have like a significant length to them, and they charge more for those visual novels, regardless of whether or not they have voice acting. I mean, I want to keep in mind that I don't have voice acting, so I don't want to like ask for the moon. But at the same time, I can make bigger stuff. And to be honest with you guys, I like making bigger stuff. So just the realization that it's like, no, I feel dissatisfied with this right now. Wait, maybe the entire reason I'm dissatisfied with it is because it's too small and I can grow it. And then it's like, oh, I could do something like this. So another thing that I want to mention here is that, as you may recall, the silent column's length, which is the previous big visual novel that I worked on, its word count is around 260,000 words, and that took a really long time to make. And this project, it looks like, well, I'll just do a simple calculation here. Right, so this one is planned on being around 300,000 words. So obviously that's significantly longer than the silent column. And it's like, well, will this also take me a boatload of time? And the answer to that is pretty simply a few things. First of all, I know more what I'm doing now, as opposed to the silent column where I was figuring a whole bunch of stuff out for the first time. Second of all, there are far fewer uh, characters. Like, I think there's going to be maybe like, oh geez, at most like 10 characters who need sprites, you know. Whereas the silent column, I think it had like, I don't even know how many the silent column had. It had like upwards of 15 at least, or like around like upwards of 17 or something like that. It was a lot of different characters, and there was a lot of like, I don't know. I just feel like the scope of this, even though the word count is high, it's like, look, basically you have two love interests. You could say you have three, fair enough. You have three, including Mystery Man, right? But it all basically takes place in the same town. Occasionally they might visit some other places, but it's not like in the silent column, they were in like a big city and they would go to different areas and travel around, and then there was also an island that they would go to, and then there was also like a journey that Osti and the main character would go on, and then they ended up in Lycia's domain and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, and but this is just like, I don't know. I just feel like this is much more manageable. It's in one small town, more or less. Occasionally, you will go see Alia's dad. Uh, but that's not really that many backgrounds, to be honest with you. I don't know. You'll go see Alia's dad and visit the castle ruins. Um, you're probably, I guess, going to see inside of Emily's house because she's going to be a perspective character. But I don't know. The point is, I think that there are far fewer characters, and the scope, I feel, is significantly smaller than the silent column, even if the word count might be uh, significantly higher. And I know what I'm doing more than I did when I was working on the silent column, and it would be nice to do a nice quality, long, sink your teeth into it project. And when I was working on the silent column, I'll be honest with you, some of the initial planning when I was working on the silent column was I wanted each love interest to have multiple roots. I was like, okay, I want Sarah to have 3 roots that would all be slightly different. And I didn't really get to do that. And part of why I didn't get to do that is because there were like 4 love interests. So it was like, okay, well, if each love interest has 3 roots, then that would be like 12 roots. And how long would I want each of those roots to be? That would be like a lot. But I think with this, because there are only 2 love interests, I think I can get away with it. Yeah, I'm just sharing my thoughts with you guys. I hope you do not mind. A lot of this is just me brainstorming and it's up in the air right now, but I just wanted to share this because I'm excited uh, and looking forward to it. And I already started writing Alia's more mature and knows. I do think that's an interesting idea that it's like sometimes she knows this plot point and other times she doesn't, depending on what happened. I mean, it's been over 20 years or something like that. It's been around 20 years. A lot can happen in 20 years, man. And there's a lot you can do with Nola, and it would be interesting learning about the Mystery Man, too. And it makes sense to have like a little bonus thing where it's like, hey, you spent a lot of time with me, here's an extra little date or something. Uh, yeah, I don't know. Uh, that's all I have to say. Just brainstorming with you guys. Please have a nice day. And thank you for listening.